What's up, guys? Channel, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Today is a pretty momentous occasion for the America First movement. Well, not today, a couple days ago. So yeah, as you know, Tucker and Nick have done an interview together. Huge moment, long overdue, long awaited moment that everybody's kind of been waiting for. I haven't watched it all yet. I've gotten about halfway through it, so I wanted to kind of analyze it and kind of highlight some of the differences between Tucker and Nick that still exist. But I also want to be a little bit careful in this video. So, if you've been watching this channel for a little bit, I analyzed the Nick and Candace interview from a few months ago, and I was very hostile to Candace in that video. Mainly because I thought she was being hostile to Nick, being dishonest, um, kind of gaslighting him throughout the interview, trying to whatever the female version of sunning someone is, which I think Tucker does a couple times in this, but I don't really think it's malicious. Um, so yeah, I kind of wanted to analyze this interview in the same way, but without kind of um, some of the righteous indignation I had towards Candace, because I do think that what her interview um, was fundamentally just like was just a trap for Nick, or not even a trap. It was an ambush, 100%. Um, so yeah, we're gonna kind of look at not kind of we are gonna watch probably the entirety of the Tucker and Nick interview. I'm not sure how I'm gonna do it yet. There may be a part one and a part two. We'll see how far we get um, with this. Um, so yeah, before we get started, I did want to take a look at some of the reactions to the interview. Because a lot of times with these, what you can kind of glean from the interview or what you kind of need to know about the interview a lot of times is in the reaction of the people who are our enemies, frankly. So the people like Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin, Josh Hammer, um, Joel Berry, a lot of these types, um, they have been absolutely seething since this interview dropped. So a very good tell. I mean, obviously, I don't think anybody needs this spelled out, but anybody who's freaking out or clutching their pearls about this interview is um, somebody to not be trusted. I'm sure, obviously, you can look at this interview with a discerning eye um, and point out things you liked, you didn't like. I thought it was a great interview overall. But yeah, I mean, a lot of these people are just absolutely seething right now. Dinesh D'Souza being another one. So I wanted to take a look at some of that stuff. Excuse me, some of that stuff first, um, and look at something Nick had to say about this interview before we get started on that. But yeah, we should be able to watch the whole thing. This will be a longer video, which is why I might do it in a part one and part two. Um, SW and I will still be doing our show this weekend. I've just been out of town and busy with some family stuff, so I haven't been able to kind of get on schedule with that like I've wanted to. But this presented a great opportunity to be able to do some analysis content. So here we are. So let's take a look at some of the reactions to this and kind of some of the peripheral stuff surrounding the interview. So let me share my screen really quick. Hold on, there we go. All right, so we'll look at this one here in a sec. Um, so yeah, let's take a listen to what Mark Levin. So if you've listened to the interview, I'm assuming most people listening to this probably have already listened to the full interview already, but we're going to take a listen again in case you haven't. Mark Levin was mentioned by Nick at the beginning of the video, or the beginning of the interview by name, actually, as one of the people that red pilled him originally. And Mark Levin took major issue with that. As we're going to see here, he is unhinged Mark Levin, very cold energy from him. If you compare like how he looks here, like even in this picture, he looks menacing. You don't really get warmth from his picture. You don't get warmth from when he speaks. That's something I've been trying to tap into lately and kind of use that to get a better understanding for people. Do you get cold energy or warm energy from them? Cold energy people, it, I could do a whole episode about those kind of people, but yeah, I mean, with Mark Levin, you're definitely getting cold energy, not not warm. It doesn't feel Christ-like. So he's been one of the people that's been pearl clutching the hardest about this interview, mainly because Nick name dropped him and said that, when he was, I don't know how old he would have been at the time, maybe 16 or 17, he was a Mark Levin fan. He used to listen to his show. As a lot of us were back then, he was just kind of, Nick was kind of more of a normie conservative. And, like Nick said, back then, all you really had to go off of was all you really had in the way of conservative commentary was like Fox News, PragerU, and Mark Levin on talk radio. You had Rush Limbaugh, you had Bill O'Reilly on talk radio, and then he moved to Fox. But yeah, I mean, really, all you had was talk radio, Fox. Um, the internet wasn't what it is now. So, yeah, I mean, Mark Levin was touching on very basic, pardon the language, but basic bitch conservatism back then. And yeah, I think what Nick said that originally got him thinking about demographics and immigration was Mark Levin saying on his show when Nick was about 17 or 18. Mark Levin said on his show, "Why do we think it's a good thing that America is becoming a majority non-white country?" Which is correct. Mark Levin tries to walk it back in this clip. We don't have to listen to the whole thing, but just to get a feel for kind of how these people are reacting. Uh, to the Nick and Tucker interview, you can just listen to Mark Levin, how he's reacting to Nick. This is kind of interesting.
White people that they need to become the minority or something better with minorities that they need to become the majority. In other words, underscoring how racist this is. You better dump that just in case. I used a word that may not be permitted. This little Adolf claims that is what planted the seed. Let me tell you something, you little punk. That seed was always there.
I love how tough these people are too, like the Mark Levins of the world. Ben Shapiro does this too. It is a very Jewish thing to be like, listen here, you little twerp. I'm going to tell you how it is. It's like, you're not tough, you're not scary. Um, people like this love, and it's kind of the same tone that they have when they talk about wiping Hamas off the face of the earth and saying we're gonna we're gonna wipe the floor with Hamas, and they're very tough when they're behind a microphone. But there's no doubt that if you were to face Mark Levin if in a dark alley or something, these people aren't tough. These people are very weak, and they hide behind their words and um, kind of use that as a proxy for violence because they have no physical capacity for violence. So yeah, they're very it's actually kind of effeminate the way that these people lean on these tough words. So Mark Levin is saying, "Listen here, you little Adolf." Yeah, yeah, real tough guy here.
Let me tell you something, you little punk. That seed was always there. That seed was always there. Again, I've talked to tens of millions of people who listen to this program over the years, tens of millions, maybe 100 million. You're the only one with the seed. You're it. You're it. So apparently you were born with this seed. And since I'm so
Does he mean that all white Europeans are born anti-Semitic, that it's in their DNA? That's what Josh Hammer has claimed.
influential in your life, why don't you cut it out?
Yeah,
Why don't you cut it
yeah.
out? Why are you such a Jew hater, Christian hater, America hater?
How was Nick a Christian hater? I haven't heard that one before.
I'm planting another seed, you little bastard. What do you think?
Imagine being someone listening to Mark Levin in their car and they're like, "Yeah, get that little bastard. Yeah, yeah, get him, get him."
So this was all phony baloney.
I
But
don't think
there's
he
the
was.
headlines.
Oops. I don't think he was being phony baloney.
Exactly what these left wing sites and media want.
Yeah, so I mean, this is how the Mark Levins are sounding. They're just absolutely seething that Nick got an interview with Tucker. Um, so yeah, this is another angle that I wanted to cover before we jump into the actual interview. So Dinesh D'Souza posted this about Charlie Kirk. So he's saying, so this is what Dinesh had to say. He said, "I'm posting the next two exchanges. The two text exchanges with Charlie Kirk where he calls Nick Fuentes a vermin and insists even my debating him and defeating his arguments nevertheless amplifies him. One can only imagine what Charlie would say about Tucker's butt-licking interview with Fuentes. And it is always weird. Like these people are always have like this weird, like almost like sexual undertone. Like they can't stop thinking about butts and poop and licking and like uh, even if you don't like Nick and Tucker's interview, the first thing I would think about it would not be this was like Nick sniffing Tucker's butt and licking it. Like very perverted mind here. I don't know where that comes from. Maybe it's an indie. I don't understand what that is. But yeah, so Dinesh shares these texts with Charlie Kirk, where Charlie said this after Nick and Dinesh D'Souza did a debate together on Alex Jones's show. And Charlie Kirk said, "This was a massive mistake that you did this. He is vermin, and you just gave him one of the biggest boosts of his career." I mean, look, this is who Charlie Kirk was, and I was respectful after he passed away. I'm not some rabid leftist who was celebrating it. I think it's one of the most horrific moments that the right wing has ever seen. But this is who Charlie Kirk was. He did not. This was only a few months ago, too. For all the people that are saying, "Oh, Charlie Kirk was getting base, dude," he was. Give him a couple more weeks. He was going to start really really laying into Israel. No, he wasn't. This is who he was. He didn't think that Nick should have any right to talk. He didn't want criticism of Jews out in the ether. So yeah, I mean, this is who Charlie Kirk always was. And what I really don't like is that people like Dinesh D'Souza, and you're seeing this from a lot of people, um, using Charlie Kirk as a way to gatekeep the right, using Charlie Kirk from beyond the grave as a way to gatekeep the right. Um, Respectfully, Charlie Kirk is dead. Okay. So this is what I had to say. I said, look, I'm sorry Charlie died and it was tragic, but I'm going to be honest here. I don't really care, nor does it really matter who he did and didn't want platformed. He is not a deity. He's gone, and invoking his name beyond the grave like this is getting really old really fast. And yeah, I stand by that. I think that it's just cheap. It's very cheap and it's a way to kind of deify Charlie Kirk. And, I think he was a good guy. I think he was a good Christian. But what he thought on what his opinion was on who should and shouldn't be platformed on the right wing, um, really holds no bearing, honestly. Um, he was a family man, he was a Christian, but he is gone now. And he was not God, he was not Christ, he was not a prophet. And to invoke his name to try to say, well, Charlie wouldn't have wanted this. Charlie's not here. And frankly, we all know that Charlie wouldn't have wanted this. And you can say that it's a tragedy that he's dead, which I believe. I think that's a tragedy. But you saying that does not mean that you have to kind of retcon who he was and wasn't. It's just funny to me that people are really well, they were at least after Charlie died, really hung up on the idea that he was about to become based. No, he was not becoming based. This is what he believed. He thought that Nick Fuentes should be given no quarter on the right, and I disagree with that. So, um, frankly, it doesn't really matter much what Charlie Kirk would have said about this because he's not God. Sorry. I know that's shocking to anybody from TPUSA who's hearing this, but yeah, I'm sorry. He was not God. So that's one angle. And then we'll get into this. This is Josh Hammer. If you don't know who he is, Newsweek. He's a Jewish author. He's a mainstay on the right wing in Con Inc. His entire timeline is him just seething about the Tucker Nick interview. So he's retweeting Mark Levin, retweeting his own piece by Mark Levin. Josh Hammer on Monday, Tucker Carlson told a neo-Nazi that he detests Christian Zionists more than anyone. So he's seething, retweeting seethers, still seething. See, I'm not going to see, and this is again, he's retweeting Seth Dillon, another Jew who runs Babylon Bee. I'm not going to put up with Jew hatred in the conservative movement, Charlie Kirk, quoting it like it's scripture. I'm sorry as anyone that Charlie Kirk has passed away and was assassinated, but um, what he has to say doesn't, it should hold no bearing on who we listen to speak now. So doesn't matter. Um, yeah, so he's just been seething about the Nick interview for a while. He's retweeting Charlie dealing with an anti-Semite. So yeah, that's one of the seethers. Here's the actual interview. We'll look at that in a sec. And then one couple other things before we get started. So I people have been asking um, what the point of this interview was. So as if you're watching this channel, you know I am a Nick Fuentes follower. Um, I go along with what he has to say generally. I believe him. I don't think that he's a malicious actor. I don't think he's pulling the wool over his fans' eyes or anything. Um, and I'll obviously like he knows the inside baseball, so I do trust him to go on an interview with Tucker and not be bought and paid for or something, which is what I saw some people suggesting that, oh, this proves that he's no longer going to be critical of Israel, and he's getting sucked in by Con Inc. and blah blah blah. Look, I think Nick did a good job of pushing back on Tucker on a lot of different issues throughout this interview. Um, but I think I think there's definitely a play here, not by Nick, and I'm sure Nick is like aware of this, um, or if he thought that malicious forces were trying to rein him in, I don't think he would be open to that. I don't think that there's a world where Nick is like, oh, they're playing ball with me. I better go support the GOP now. I don't see that happening at all. I think he has too much integrity for that. But I do think that this is a play by people who do want to neutralize Nick's movement, um, to bring him in, to try to defang him a little bit and to try to beat um, some of the critiques that are going to be coming from the further right in the 2028 election cycle. So I think, namely, that starts with JD Vance, um, who Tucker and JD Vance are good friends. Um, so I do get the inclination, and what I'm getting at is this tweet here. Um, I get the inclination that there's some truth to this tweet. Um, I don't know who Bobby Miller is, so if I'm sharing someone who's not a Nick supporter, then apologies, but I'm not sure who he is. But he says, I think the best way of understanding this interview is through the lens of Vance's presidential ambitions. The primary obstacle to Vance getting the nomination in 2028, assuming Trump willingly leaves office, is a challenge from his right. Vance knows that Fuentes is attacking him every night with vile, racist, and anti-Semitic slurs, calling him a race traitor and a sellout to the Jews. Okay, so this guy is probably not on our side, but I do think there's some truth to what he's saying here. That is why he is the only prominent GOP politician who did not send a happy Diwali message, even though his wife and children are Indian. He is acutely aware that even a simple acknowledgement of Diwali would further inflame the white nationalist crowd that already targets his family with xenophobic vitriol. Yeah, this guy's definitely not on our side. To address the Fuentes problem, this is the part I agree with. To address the Fuentes problem, as Vance sees it, he sends Tucker, an emissary of Vance World. Tucker's son works for Vance, true, to smooth things over with him. Vance figures this is a way to neutralize that threat and avoid a challenger from the right. The problem for Vance is that Fuentes likely will not go along with this. He's too egomaniacal to subordinate himself to anyone in the GOP, let alone JD. My guess is this ploy fails and JD gets outflanked by people who are even more extreme, probably true, trying in vain to court the very people who hate his family the most. Okay, well, whatever. No one hates JD Vance's family. That's all like stupid. Oh, xenophobe, whatever. I don't care about that. But this part is interesting, though. I think there could be some truth here that Vance, I don't know how it works. I mean, I'm not saying that Vance like called Tucker and said, "Hey, need a favor, big guy, bring Nick on to neutralize him." But there does seem to be, because you had Nick talking to the Red Scare girls who are in tight with Peter Thiel. Um, so, I've seen a lot of people say that they think that this is proof that Nick is selling out. I don't see it that way. I see it more as a play by uh, the people on the right who want to be ascendant as a way to try to either get Nick under their wing or or at least become friendly enough with him to get him to not attack them as much. So, like this guy says, I don't really think that'll work. I think it's a play on their part, but I don't think it'll work. Um, so yeah, I mean, we'll see. Nick has already said that he still has some suspicions about Tucker, but that he's willing to work with people who are America first. So I think that's fair. I mean, that's coalition building. That's what politics is. So um, I take no issue with that. I do think that there could be some truth to this, though. So we'll see. We'll see how the next few months play out. We never really thought that we'd be seeing a Nick and Tucker interview, but here we are. So we'll see how all that plays out. So here's the interview. And then let's get to one thing Nick said about the interview, and then we'll jump into the actual interview. This is an important part, and this really separates the Tucker interview from the Candace interview if you listen to what he's saying here.
But it was honest, it was direct, it was straight.
Oops.
And I think both of us were maybe measuring the other and sizing the other one up and trying to figure each other out. But it was honest, it was direct, it was straightforward, it was challenging, it was fair. But I think we had a really good, interesting conversation Sunday night. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. And then I went back to my hotel and I went back out Monday morning to do the show. And with full disclosure, there was nothing like an ambush at all. We did something like a pre-interview. That's how I would characterize it Sunday night. We walked through many of the topics, and we actually laid out exactly what we would be speaking about Monday morning. Monday, I showed up a half hour before we recorded, and we walked through every single thing we would talk about. And he told me, this is what I'm going to ask you. There were no surprises, no ambush. And I really want to say that because I want to give him a lot of credit for a variety of reasons. But maybe first and foremost, it was fair. And if you watch my show, if you know anything about me, I do very well, actually, in a hostile environment.
Yeah, that was the big thing I wanted to highlight here. So when I'm analyzing the Tucker Nick interview, I want to make it pretty clear. I'm not trying to rain on the parade and go, actually, Tucker's still an enemy. I just kind of want to, I don't really know what's going to come of this. I want to just kind of analyze it and because I remember listening to it and thinking that there are some points here that I think Nick and Tucker are still pretty clearly not aligned on, and some things that I disagree with Tucker on, just fundamentally. But that's no reason to not do the interview, though, and that's no reason to not be cordial throughout the interview. So I thought there were plenty of times that Nick stood his ground, stood up to Tucker. I thought there were a couple moments where Tucker was a little bit disingenuous, and we'll talk about those. Um, but yeah, this isn't going to be like the Candace one. I want to be a little bit more positive during this. And yeah, we'll just see where it goes. Um, let's see. So the first 37 minutes, I've watched it up to about here, the assassination attempt on Fuentes. So yeah, so if I remember correctly, up until about the 37-minute mark, um, that is just covering like Nick's origin story, which, you know, everyone's heard a million times. I would hope at this point that the people who um, schedule these interviews and stuff like did their research and just watched an old interview of Nick talking about where he came from and who attacked him and stuff. We have to do that every interview, but it's 37 minutes of Nick just going through his past and everything, and him and Tucker just kind of, you know, level setting and getting to a level where they can talk about things. So we'll go to the 37-minute mark and then just kind of go from there.
On this one, where's Shapiro? Where's all these people? And in some way, they were all sort of complicit in this. So I realized that the conservative movement was completely bankrupt in that way.
Yeah,
and I became very radical.
Well, you became. I mean, let me just say, I'm so familiar with. You know, I was much older when it happened to me, and much more insulated. I was not a college student. I was like 45. So, you know, and I was in a much better place to withstand the pressure. But I do think and I want to, this is my main question to you, is when you get attacked, when people call you names, like they always called me racist, and I would always think to myself, I'm actually not. I would tell you if I was racist. I'm a little sexist, but I'm not racist. And I never understood why they did that. And then I thought maybe the point is to make me racist. Where you just get to a point where you're like, well, if you're going to slander me, then I'll just become the thing you're calling me. I do think that's a feature of human nature, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
And if you stare too intently at the accusers, at the, whatever Ben Shapiro's or Mark Levin's or Ted Cruz or whoever it is calling you names, it like distorts you and you actually change and become what they say you are. Have you thought that ever? Do you worry that happened to you?
No, I don't think it ever did, because
So right there, that's one of the only things, and I'm sure there will be more. Again, not trying to be negative, but there were a couple things that I was like, really, we're doing this again. That is almost verbatim what Candace Owens did to Nick in their interview. And Nick's a good sport. He's not going to go, "What are you saying? I'm not hate." Like he's not going to lash out, obviously, and he pushes back very well here. We'll get into it. But this is almost verbatim what Candace did in her interview. At that point, it was a debate, but her interview with Nick, where she asks 21 minutes into the video, she says, "So you're telling me that you were attacked by Jews. Did that make you hate all Jews? Is that why you hate all Jews?" And that's where the interview kind of goes sideways. Luckily, that doesn't happen here because Tucker is he's a much more skilled presenter and a much more skillful orator. He can kind of frame things without making it so on the nose. Candace just isn't smart enough to be able to do that. But it's still kind of fundamentally the same. Tucker is asking, "So do you think that after they called you racist and anti-Semitic, you just said, 'Yeah, I am that'?" Those are not labels that Nick would assign to himself. It's just kind of a meaningless question. But to be charitable, maybe he wanted to give Nick the opportunity to tell a larger audience that he is not, in fact, those things. That could be a thing. I mean, I don't really think that Tucker's goal here was to rehabilitate Nick. Um, so I don't really know where that question came from. I'm not a huge fan of it. Kind of painting Nick as like this disgruntled monster who became this way. It's like a guy who steps out of a car crash completely mangled, and they're like, the car crash made him this way. I think Nick's points are reasonable. I think the things that he says are reasonable. I think the critiques he has of the system about Jewish influence, about Israeli influence, race, gender, all that, I think that's all reasonable. So I don't listen to this stuff and say, "Wow, how did he become this way?" Then I would have to be like, how did I become this way? Well, reality made me this way. It wasn't like I got sideswiped by a Mack truck and then I woke up and said, "Gee, I hate everyone." Nobody hates anyone. Um, Nobody is like, "Yeah, those guys did make me hateful." No, it's just reality. Reality happened. Smart people responded accordingly, and that's how Nick ended up where he's at. So it's not rocket science, and it's a little bit disingenuous, but let's be charitable.
I know who I am. I had a very firm grounding of what I'm about, which is that I was deeply Catholic, and I still am, deeply patriotic and pro-American. And I don't consider myself temperamentally to be an angry or a hateful person. So I never, in other words, lost my center. They say this thing about you look into the abyss and the abyss stares back into you. That never really happened to me. I was frustrated. I was frustrated because I felt like I was being denied a level playing field.
That's also such an easy cop out for people to just it reminds me, I think I said this during the Candace thing, that a big thing you see from people trying to give backhanded compliments to Nick is they say he's so funny. He is a great entertainer. You got to give him that. Hey, I may not like him, but he is a great entertainer. That's just kind of a backhanded way of trying to make it appear as if you're giving a compliment when you're not really giving one. Nick is not a comedian. He is a political commentator, and he says factual, true things on his show every night. He doesn't go up there to get laughs. He's not a shock jock. He's not saying this stuff to evoke a reaction from you and go for gasps, as they say. Um, so yeah, I think that's very wishful thinking that you know, oh, well, he's just hateful and he was made this way because, I mean, wouldn't you be this way too if everybody was bullying you? No, I think it happened in the reverse way. I think they hated him because he was telling the truth. Like, you see what I mean? I don't think they got the order right there. So, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that, but Nick refutes it pretty well.
Opportunity, and it wasn't fair. I felt like I was right, and these people that were basically hypocrites, grifters, not really conservative, they were controlling the conversation, and as a consequence, they were controlling the Republican movement. And I really perceive this as like an urgent crisis, because if we wanted Trump to deliver America First, to realize it, it had to, the Trump movement had to transform the conservative movement to reflect the victory that Trump won.
So, and I won't keep torturing you with biographical questions, but I
Thank
do want
you.
to, like, so how you get, your show gets canceled, you drop out of college, you have no money, you decide you want to work at the Leadership Institute, which is like a conservative think tank of, or some organization of longstanding in Arlington, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Can't get the job there because you're
You can tell that Candace and Tucker just have completely, like, Tucker is just on a different level than Candace. Candace didn't know what was it, the the group that Nick was a part of, students international, the international student group. Ironic, I can't remember the name now, but the international students group that Nick was a part of, and Candace was like, "What is that?" As if it was like a shady conservative organization. Tucker knows what Leadership Institute is. Um, so yeah, it's just funny that like this is kind of like the final boss. And it is so funny to see Nick and Tucker talking. I remember um an ex-friend of mine, um, I remember we would have these talks about this friend of mine, like I said, friend, now ex-friend, um, he used to be like a Groyper America First guy, and eventually he became very disenchanted with Nick. Um, Grew to hate him, made it like kind of his personality. Like, I don't like Nick. I don't like the Groypers. Some personal stuff happened, and like I said, he's now an ex-friend. But one of the things he would always say is, "Does Nick really think that his approach is going to lead him to talk to Tucker Carlson? Why would Tucker ever want to talk to somebody like Nick who's attacking him?" And it's like, fast forward 8 months from when my friend would say that, and here we are. It's just so funny to me that these people are completely wrong. Like these John Doyle types, these A-logs, these seethers, the people who are like, Nick's never going to get anywhere with that kind of rhetoric. And now he's like, kind of patching things up with Tucker. It's like, yeah, you guys were just literally like stupid and wrong. So yeah, that's just something I just remembered. But yeah,
worried about immigration. It's all pretty amazing. And then, like, where does that leave you? How did you succeed?
Well,
Model UN. That's the that was bugging me so much. Model UN, the group that Nick was a part of, and Candace was like, "What's Model UN?" As if Nick was like casually dropping that he was funded by like the UN, because Candace's conspiracy brain was like, UN, he's taking money from the UN, and Nick's like, no, it's just it's a students group. It's Model UN. It models the UN. It gets you ready for international relations, poli sci, stuff like that. And it's just so funny that she's just like wasn't smart enough to know what he was talking about, or just to jump to conspiracy brain like he's taking money from Soros.
continued doing my show. I did it independently.
What does that mean? How do you do it? How do you do a show independently? Like, how did you do it?
I started a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And I was in my parents'
Did you hear that? Tucker can't.
Which is like a conservative think tank.
Listen to this is very funny. Listen to what Tucker says in response to Nick. I'm not knocking Tucker for this. This is just so. It is such a generational divide here. Listen to what he says.
Think of, or some organization of longstanding in Arlington, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Can't get the job there because you're worried about immigration. It's all pretty amazing. And then, like, where does that leave you? How did you succeed?
Well, I continued doing my show. I did it independently.
What does that mean? How do you do it? How do you do a show independently?
What does that mean? How do you do a show independently? Like, I don't know if he's playing dumb or what, but you can probably imagine that somebody like Tucker, who's been in that media bubble for I mean, what, 30 years at this point. Got his start at CNN, had a show on MSNBC, had a show on Fox, moved to the Tucker Carlson network that got funding from, I think, the Rockbridge Group. Um, at every step, there's kind of been like a larger force. And I understand Tucker works for himself now doing his show. I get that. But the idea of like just like starting a channel and buying a camera and just like talking to you like I am right now is a complete anathema to Tucker. Like he doesn't understand that like not every person who's influential. I'm not saying that about me. I'm like talking about Nick here. Like the idea that not every person who's influential needs like startup money from a billionaire. So Tucker's like, what independent? What does that mean? It like it means start a YouTube channel and do things like how I'm doing it right now and just let it grow. So I think that's hysterical that he doesn't really understand that like independent media, even it's ironic because he is like independent media himself now, but he doesn't really understand how someone like Nick could get a start. And yeah, it's a complete generational divide here.
Like, how did you do it?
I started a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And I was in my parents' basement, and I put up a green screen. I got my computer, webcam, and I just started going live every night in the same way that I did at RSBN. I just did it on my own channel where I had creative control over it. And at that point, I basically mounted an attack on the conservative establishment from the outside. I sort of realized that there's sort of two ways you could play this. You could infiltrate the conservative movement. I could recant all my views and apologize and pretend to be one of them and bypass the gatekeepers, the censors. I said, or I could kind of be in the wilderness and I would be alone and I would be radioactive, but I could challenge the credibility and legitimacy of the conservative movement and its claim to represent conservatives. And that was kind of the mission, was to say, no, the immovable standard is America first. I'm going to represent it. And the conservative movement is going to have to move to me. I will not move towards them. And I thought maybe I'll make money and maybe I won't.
Yeah, I mean, that was very providential. That was perfectly predicted by Nick. The idea that the conservative movement, and it's crazy that he was thinking about that in like the year 2017 before really anyone knew his name. Um, I remember the ex-friend I was talking to you guys about a couple minutes ago. One thing he would always love to say is, for all of his talking, what has Nick really done? How has he changed anything? And what I would always point to is the fact that Charlie Kirk himself had to adjust his talking points to sound closer to Nick over time. So famously in 2019 during Groyper War, Charlie Kirk was out there saying we need to staple green card to diplomas. We need 10 million more new legal immigrants. America is just an idea. If you, what did he say? If you uh, took the Constitution and put it on an island, that would be America. But Israel needs a homeland and needs to be blood and soil. He was saying all these crazy things back in 2019 before anyone was challenging him from the right. And Nick ended up being proven right that the conservatives would have to move closer to him, and that's exactly what's happened. That's exactly what is happening with Nick talking to Tucker. So don't listen to people who say things like that, that well, he hasn't even done anything. Listen to the conversations we're having now. I mean, I don't think that any of this really happens without Nick, if we're being honest. I mean, who else was going to do it, you know? Who else was doing it? Who else has been making these points? I mean, obviously you have people like Jared Taylor that have been, with American Renaissance since 1992 or something, but at least in terms of like contemporary people, it's really been Nick, and people have eventually drifted to where he's at, not the other way around. So that's why I give him a lot of not that he needs me to give him leeway, but that's why I'm very trustful of Nick, because none of his talking points have really changed. There are things that he's come around on, like the Russia-Ukraine stuff. There's geopolitical stuff that he's kind of changed his opinion on, but he hasn't like fundamentally walked back his worldview and said, you know what, I don't really believe in race and IQ anymore. Like all this stuff is still consistent. He's been very consistent, which is why I trust him. So there's no reason to believe, as a lot of people were saying, that this interview signifies him selling out necessarily, or not even necessarily. I don't think this symbolizes or signifies him selling out whatsoever. Um, so yeah, I think this is a good sign. Um, I think I think the people like Vance, like Matt Walsh, like Tucker, like these Israel critical right wing people are still going to have to move closer to Nick. Um, and I think you're seeing that with Vance, with what that tweet said about Vance being one of the only conservative people that didn't tweet out Happy Diwali. The fact that when Vance went to Israel a few days ago, he didn't go to the Western Wall. He went to a church. I don't know if it was a Catholic church, but he went to a church instead of the Western Wall. Vance is very conscious of these things, and it wouldn't surprise me if this was kind of like I was saying earlier, like kind of a play on their part. But the reason I'm not worried about that is because I have faith that Nick is consistent, and that's not coming from like a blind faith of like the way I believe in God or something. Not that that's blind faith, but what I'm saying is that this isn't coming from like a theological belief, like I believe in Nick Fuentes. I'm saying this based on evidence and based on track record, that I don't think he's going to be consumed by Con Inc. or by the GOP. So I have a lot of faith that he's going to remain steadfast.
But I'm going to try it for a couple of years and I'll see how it goes.
So, but the sight picture in your head was enemy is conservative movement.
Yes.
Do you think that was a good choice?
Yes, absolutely.
Rather than like, but why not like Antifa or, I I don't know, Anti-Defamation League, or there are a lot of institutions on like George Soros. Like, why would it be their conservative establishment?
Well, he did attack the ADL. The thing is that Nick will attack the ADL and the ZOA. So there was this famous clip of, not famous, I think you know what, we'll pull it up actually. It's fine. You know what? It's going to be a little hard. We'll see if we can find it. If we can't, we'll drop it. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. So yeah, this is a clip from Nick's
we have to talk about
Nick's debate or talk with Alex Jones. This was a while ago, October of 2023. So yeah, so Tucker says, "Why don't you attack the ADL?" Well, Nick has attacked the ADL. He was a big part of the ban the ADL movement with Keith Woods. And yeah, so what I would say is that yeah, Nick attacks the ADL. He just also attacks people like the ZOA, which is the conservative arm of Jewish influence. Listen to what Alex Jones had to say about this, or didn't have to say rather.
Then we have to talk about Jewish power, right and left. You can say F the ADL, but would you say F the ZOA, the Zionist Organization of America, with Mort Klein?
I get Jews thinking they deserve it. Israel's tiny. And I know a lot of Jews that are really nice, smart people.
Did you hear that? So Nick says, yeah, I understand F the ADL, which is very easy to do. These are all easy targets. Attacking George Soros doesn't lose you your job. Attacking George Soros and the ADL, maybe less so the ADL, but to refute Tucker's point, Nick has attacked the ADL. That doesn't lose you sponsorships. That doesn't lose you a show. Attacking Jewish influence as a whole does. And Alex isn't even comfortable, at least this is 2023. He wasn't comfortable saying this at this point.
Zionist Organization of America.
Nick says, I understand F the ADL, but would you say that about the ZOA?
The ZOA, the Zionist Organization of America, with Mort Klein.
I get Jews thinking they deserve it. Israel's tiny. And I know a lot of Jews that are really nice, smart people.
So, yeah, I mean, Nick says, okay, well, what about the ZOA? And Alex just sputters. And, Tucker's talking about, well, why can't you attack Antifa? Dude, everybody's attacking Antifa. And also, it's not that they're not worth critiquing because everybody's already doing it. It's just that with the left, we already know what we're getting. Nobody is, at least Nick, nobody in this sphere is trying to make amends with Antifa. Everybody knows what Antifa is. It reminds me of when people try to say, well, we need to attack the communists more than anything. Yeah, dude, communism is a failed ideology. There are no real communists left anymore. clearly the problem is Jewish influence. Um, and to spin your wheels talking about Soros, the irony is that if you attack Soros enough, they call you anti-Semitic anyway because Soros is Jewish. So yeah, I do think that spending your time attacking Con Inc. is a more useful or is better using your time because the GOP and the right wing are going to be probably the vehicle through which any change can happen. Um, I do like what Richard Spencer has to say about the left and about um, not really the left, but the Democrats possibly becoming a vehicle for white people. I think that's interesting, but at least as it sits now, um, it does seem like the vehicle is the right wing, and if you can change the right wing, get them to adopt our talking points, then you can start to impact real change. So, yeah, you need to fix your car. You need to fix your car first, and then you can race the other car. Um, yeah, it's probably a poor analogy, but yeah, I do think it's actually a good use of time to attack the right wing, actually. Because without doing that, what you end up doing is just saying basically what people have said for as long as I've been alive about the GOP and just say, well, they're better than the left. It's like, well, at what point do we make them, at what point do we actually try to make them like substantively better than the left and not just, well, they're there and they're the right wing, so we got to do it, I guess, you know. Um, so yeah, that's definitely a good use of time. So yeah, I'm not really with Tucker on that one. And again, I'll be charitable. Maybe he's just asking the question about why Nick chose to do that. So
Why do you think that was important?
Well, I kind of took a page from Trump's playbook, which is that you have to, in the country, the left was hegemonic over all the institutions. And you have this organized opposition to the left and the Democrats and all the left-wing controlled institutions. And the organized opposition comes from movement conservatism, the Republican Party, Fox News, the sort of constellation of conservative institutions. And I said, the problem is, whether you go Democrat or you go Republican, you're kind of just like getting the same thing. You're getting the establishment effectively. The opposition is basically controlled or moderated. It's not authentic opposition. It's not a true alternative. And so I said, and by we, I mean the true America First nationalists, we need to fight for the mantle of the opposition. And then leading the opposition, then we can take the fight to the left as the conservatives, as the Republicans, whatever. But first, you have to win that internal battle among the audience that the conservatives have. Because that's really the problem, is that they have usurped. The base is extremely conservative, extremely anti-left. But the Republican Party, like those that represent them, are not at all. A lot of them are atheists, a lot of them are gay, a lot of them are feminists.
yeah, I don't see how, like Nick is saying, the Conservative Party doesn't really represent the level of conservatism of their voters. I don't see how just looking at that and saying we need to be attacking Soros. I don't see how that is a good use of time. Obviously, you need to be trying to reform the system that is going to be the vehicle for your group's uh, desired outcomes. Like obviously, you want to make your thing stronger and then bring that fight to the enemy.
And so I said, like, we kind of need to rally, like Trump did, rally the base against the establishment, and then take the fight to the left as the true alternative. And if you can win that, then you win the country. That was kind of Trump's model.
What did you see as like the most important gatekeepers that needed to be overturned, pushed aside in order to do this?
It was the Zionist Jews, like Dave Rubin, like Ben Shapiro, like Dennis Prager. It was these the guys that were really controlling the media apparatus that seemed to me to be the biggest impediment.
Fox is not a Jewish business, though.
Well, Rupert Murdoch is an ally of Netanyahu, so he's
True.
aligned.
Yeah.
And he owns the whole News Corp empire. So, and yeah, he's certainly a part of it also.
So Tucker tries to push back, and you get that pushback a lot too, that Fox isn't run by a Jewish person. It's run by the Murdochs. Well, I mean, the Murdochs are best, like Nick just said, Murdochs are best friends with Netanyahu, and um, every piece of media from Fox News, everything Fox News reports is through a Zionist lens. So, um, yeah, and it's just funny. Tucker doesn't really address it. There's a lot of points like that, and I don't think Tucker's being malicious or shifty or anything. I just think these are things that he maybe just hasn't thought about. Um, and I am being charitable to him here. I think like a point like that. I think that before this interview, I think Tucker would have said something like he just said. Well, Fox isn't run by Jews, so what are you talking about? Well, the Murdochs are friends with the Netanyahu, so I just don't think he's thought about that, and you can kind of see it with the look on his face. He's just like, "Oh, yeah, yeah." So maybe he's taking it in. Maybe he's becoming based. I don't know, but him having Nick on the show is a good sign. So
Um, I mean, Dave Rubin, though, does he matter?
No, not really.
Right. I mean, Dave Rubin is like, I don't know. Do people watch Dave Rubin?
They did back then. I mean, because you got to consider they were kind of like the ascendant new media, you know? They represented the next big thing.
I mean, and Ben Shapiro seems irrelevant to me now.
But back.
I mean, and Ben Shapiro seems irrelevant to me now.
But back then, for
no,
the
I
young,
guess that's
was
true.
huge. Mm-hmm.
So maybe you won.
yeah, I mean, you got to remember that back then, when the whole new media apparatus was starting, you had Daily Wire. Dave Rubin was a pretty big deal. I mean, again, he's another victim. Like, there's some Schadenfreude here, but he's a victim of this whole of the right wing coming closer to Nick and not the other way around. Um, yeah, Rubin was a big deal. His whole free speech, libertarian conservatarianism thing. That there was a big push for that. That was appealing to people for a small while there. Dave Rubin was on tour with Jordan Peterson. I went to that when I was in my early 20s in 2018, maybe 2019. So he was a big deal. He was touring with Peterson and Shapiro. I think even Tucker and Nick are downplaying it a little bit. I still think Shapiro is a big deal, not in these online circles, but to your average person, like normies who are vaguely conservative, I think they're starting to get the idea that there may be something up with Shapiro and Israel. But they still kind of fundamentally listen to what he has to say because they think he's a smart guy and he talks fast and he goes hard against the woke tards. So I think people still listen to him and Dave Rubin. Yeah, granted, he's irrelevant now. But there was a time when Dave Rubin was a pretty big deal. So, and Daily Wire is still a big deal. I mean, that's a 50 million, $100 million company. I don't know the exact number, but it's not peanuts. They're not me. You know what I mean? So,
Oh, certainly.
Well, it wasn't that long ago that many Americans thought they were inherently safe from the kinds of disaster. It's even
ads,
for power you can trust the
ads.
country to get away from this. Almost Joe Kent.
Mm-hmm.
Those but you've attacked all of those people.
Yeah.
Why would you sincere in their opposition to that and who have some ability, which has been so destructive, I think, and I've seen it.
God, so many ads. I forget how blessed we are to listen to Nick's content where there's no ads. So yeah, you forget that, he is independent, but he's still running the ads, which, you got to keep the lights on. I get it, but the ads for the gum and the Alp and the seed oil free food, man.
Who are the voices who are sincere in their opposition to that and who have some ability to change the country's orientation on foreign policy? And those would include Marjorie Taylor Greene, J.D. Vance, Matt Gaetz, me. But you've attacked all of those people.
Yeah.
Why would you, and almost Joe Kent, those strike me as someone who's really interested in this topic. I'm not that interested in the Jews, but I'm very interested in the foreign policy question.
I also don't like when people do that. I'm not interested in the Jews. It's kind of this way, and I'll be charitable. I don't know that he's doing that as a way to attack Nick necessarily. I don't think he's trying to make him look foolish, but that is a tendency of people who are trying to gain credibility from outside people and say, I don't care about the Jews, the Jew, and they do like a goofy face and then wave their hands around. When Nick talks about Jewish influence and the Israeli influence, I don't hear him wildly waving his hands, screaming, the Jews made me trip over my shoelaces this morning. That's the joke they always use. I don't see him doing that. So I don't like this whole, like, what Tucker just did there. It's a very, I only really, well, I see some younger people doing that who are just like complete con ink shills, but like it is kind of an older person thing to do this almost caricature of somebody who is concerned about the very real issue of Jewish influence. So not a huge fan of that. And then Tucker we'll get into this here where Tucker names the people that he thinks we should trust and listen to, and Nick just kind of dissects them one by one and is like, well, this is why I attacked this one. I didn't do it without reason. Here's why I attacked this one. Here's where this one falls short. I mean, look, if he is going to do the thing that we just said, where he's going to bring the GOP closer to him and not Con Inc., but the conservative movement closer to him and not the other way around, yeah, it is important for him to have a very high standard for these people, and to call them out when they're wrong about stuff. So, yeah, I don't think this is a malicious thing from Tucker, but yeah, it's really getting into the meat of why Nick attacked these people, and when he breaks it down, I think it's very reasonable.
Those seem like JD Vance, Matt Gaetz, me. But you've attacked all of those people.
Yeah.
Why would you? And almost Joe Kent. Those strike me as someone who's really interested in this topic. I'm not that interested in the Jews, but I'm very interested in the foreign policy question. Those seem like the most sincere. Those seem like the only hope of the country to get away from this destructive, really self-destructive cycle. Why attack them?
Well, in short, they attacked me first.
This is an all-time part right here. So Tucker lays out all the people that he's aligned with and that he likes and stuff for various reasons. Joe Kent for one reason or another. MTG, she's recently kind of come over to the Israel critical side. And Tucker's laying all these people out, and he's like, why have you attacked them? Nick just very flatly says, well, they attacked me first. And look at Tucker's reaction.
Yeah, but like, who cares?
Well,
Who cares?
let's take Joe Kent.
I mean, you attack me constantly.
Well,
and I'm like, I don't really give a shit. I want to meet the guy.
You attacked me first, too.
No. But what I'm saying is I'm not whining about it.
Sure.
I'm just saying.
Incoherent babble when confronted. You attacked me. You attack me all the time. Well, you attack me. I don't know. I mean, okay, look. Like, what even is that? Is that really a response to what Nick said? Nick said, well, you attacked me first. Why did Tucker attack him first? Like, there's no answer to that. It's just kind of like this, like, I don't know. That's kind of what he does whenever he's cornered. It's kind of funny.
Saying like,
actually, you know what? Let's play this back at 1.5 speed. Let's see. Maybe we can go up to 2, but let's see how this goes.
You know what I mean?
Well, I don't say so because, like, take Joe Kent, for instance. I supported Joe Kent, and I talked to Joe Kent. I got introduced to him by Matt Brainerd. Matt Brainerd went to my conference in 2021. He bought a table.
Was he his campaign manager?
He was.
Okay.
Or he was a consultant, but he was on the campaign, yeah. And so I met Matt Brainerd. He liked me a lot. He loved my conference in February 21, which he bought a table at for his organization, Look at America. And in 2021, and by we, I mean my nonprofit and myself and my team, we wanted to support America First candidates in the midterms, like you said, authentic opponents.
Me too.
Yeah.
That's how I found Joe Kent.
Yes. And so I met a lot of the people in that sort of scene, like Ryan Gerdusky, I know is very supportive of Joe Kent, and other people that are more private, I don't want to name, but they put me on, not just to Joe Kent, but Patrick Witt in Georgia, Gibbs in Michigan, a lot of different people. And Joe Kent was one of
I remember this time period. It was an interesting time period. There was like a lot of hope that that a lot of these more, like, I wouldn't call them establishment politicians, but there was a hope that people who were kind of entering the political scene would stand by Nick, would endorse America First, or like Nick is going to say, at the very least, not denounce them. There was a lot of optimism in 2021 for this. I mean, this was really before all the Israel critical people kind of found their voice. And that's what really the irony here is of this is that, or not really the irony, but this is what Nick was talking about, that all these people were so afraid or either were afraid or weren't aware of the issue. While Nick has been talking about this for about 10 years. So um, for these people to kind of come around now, and Tucker, frankly, is one of them, to come around now and be like, well, I know you were talking about it for 10 years, and I know I called you evil for saying that, and now I basically agree with you, but so what, man? That's not really fair to Nick, you know what I mean?
them. And I had a phone call with Joe Kent. And I told him, I had my assistant on the phone too, who's Jewish, by the way, just because I want you to know I'm cool like that. I don't judge. But so I'm on the phone with Joe, and I said, look, we support you, and we want to do everything we can to help you. We want to have my followers knock on doors for you. We want to boost your social media. Anything that you need, we want to help you. I said, and we don't even want to be publicly associated. I said, because we know that that might hurt you. I said, the only thing that we ask in return is you can't disavow me if the media asks. And you can say whatever you need to say, but you can't disavow. And he said, yeah, I totally agree with you, because if we start disavowing each other, then we're just going to eat each other alive and the left wins. We're in agreement. And a couple months later, Joe tweeted in support of me, because I had been banned on all social media. I was on the no-fly list. So he said something on Twitter like, Nick Fuentes shouldn't be banned. He should not be censored. A month after that, I put out on Twitter, I said, Joe Kent is one of the most impressive America First candidates that's running in 22. Well, fast forward a whole year later.
That is kind of the story that happens with a lot of these people that Laura Loomer was highlighting this. And Nick was criticizing Laura Loomer on his show the other day. And he was calling her a Zionist and calling her a sellout. And she quote tweeted him and said, and screenshotted a Telegram post from 2022 where Nick was saying, vote for Laura Loomer, as if nothing can change in the 3 years. Oh, well, you supported me one time 3 years ago, so why are you walking that back? I mean, things change in that span.
I do my annual conference, AFPAC, in February 22. Marjorie Taylor Greene attends. It's we had 1,200 people, and it got a lot of media attention. And I'm driving home, because I'm on the no-fly list at this time. I'm driving home from Florida.
Can I ask you, by no-fly list, you mean not extra scrutiny, but not allowed to fly in airplanes in the United States?
Not allowed to fly, yes.
How old were you?
I was 23.
Did you have any felony convictions?
No.
Okay. I wasn't even aware that could happen. How long were you not allowed to fly in airplanes in the United States?
1 year.
Did you have any felony convictions?
No.
Okay. I wasn't even aware that.
I love how Tucker asks these things like it's impossible and granted, I'll be charitable again that I think maybe he's just trying to get Nick's story out there, but it is funny where every time Nick says I was canceled by Con Inc., I was put on the no-fly list, this person tried to end my career, Tucker just does this, and maybe it's just like a habit, maybe it's like a disarming thing he does. He goes, how is that possible? How does that happen? It's like, yeah, dude, the system hates political dissent, true political dissent, and they try to cancel those people and ruin their lives. He's like, you didn't have any felonies? How can they ban you from flights? Yeah, man, it's kind of a narco tyranny over here. You get stomped on if you criticize or question Jewish power too much, and if you go 5 miles over the speed limit, you get a ticket. But if you kill someone and you're the right skin color, maybe you get let out on bond and you get an insanity plea and you don't have to do any real time. Yeah, we live in a crazy system, man. It's not that shocking. It's horrible, but it's not like this. So this is crazy to me. It's like, all right, were you not around for J6, man?
That could happen. How long were you not allowed to fly in airplanes in the United States?
1 year.
It's really crazy.
Yeah, I was.
Sorry, I just want to get that up.
No, yeah, it's brutal.
And you confirm that you were not allowed to fly in airplanes?
Yes, I have the letter from the TSA, yeah.
Part of the reason I think he's also doing that is because at the time when Nick said that he was on the no-fly list, a lot of people just called BS randomly and said he's not actually banned. It's like, yeah, he was banned the entire time. So yeah, I think he's probably just trying to confirm for the people who are Nick haters saying he was never really banned that he was in fact actually banned.
I was on the do not board list.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's crazy. But so anyway, so I'm driving home from Florida after my conference, and I get people start texting me. Joe Kent is on Twitter, and he says, I condemn Nick Fuentes, especially his views on Israel. That's the tweet. And I texted Joe.
I'm curious to see how Tucker, I think this may be around where I stopped watching originally. And by the looks of it looks like we are probably going to have to do a part 1 and 2. So I'll keep that in mind. But yeah, I mean, this is around where I stopped watching. So I'm curious to see how Tucker responds to this, because Joe Kent is his friend. Of all the people that Tucker named, J.D. Vance, well, maybe less so Vance, but he was talking about Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, people on the right that Tucker sees as like legitimate critics of the system and stuff. Of all those people, Joe Kent seems to be the one he was closest with, maybe a CIA connection. It's not impossible. Um, but I'm curious to see how he responds to this, because what Nick is saying, or what Nick said that got him disavowed by Joe Kent, is pretty standard stuff now for political dissenters. So let's see what Tucker has to say when confronted with the fact that Joe Kent was the one who originally disavowed Nick, and Nick wasn't just punching air out of nowhere and attacking Kent for no reason.
And I said, seriously? And he texts me back and he says, we win by addition, not subtraction. I go, well, you just subtracted me out of the movement. I said, because I don't support you anymore. He goes back for seconds. He goes on Twitter and says, Nick Fuentes and his focus on race and religion does not fit with my message of inclusive populism. Inclusive populism. That doesn't sound like authentic America first. That sounds like bullshit to me. And I don't know. I know he's your friend, but I don't know him that well. And right. I'm not on the team.
Well, so my read on Joe Kent was he's totally sincere. He, like me, has always been committed to separating out like foreign policy views from ethnicity, not because, I mean, obviously I'm denounced as an anti-Semite every day. Mm-hmm. So I don't really care what ADL thinks of me, but my Christian faith tells me that.
Yeah, I mean, this is a line that Tucker tries to go with, and we'll rewind to really see what he's saying here. But he says this a lot, that he wants that he thinks you can disentangle the foreign policy from, what did he say?
I don't really care what ADL thinks of me, but denounced as an anti-Semite every day. Mm-hmm. Ethnicity, not because
he thinks you can untangle ethnicity from foreign policy and geopolitics. I mean, with the Israel lobby, you really can't, because if you ask any Jewish person, they believe that Israel is for the Jews, by the Jews, their blood and soil. So, when they're enacting their foreign policy goals and using America to further those, there is definitely an ethnic angle to that. So, I mean, I think Tucker's being sincere. I think Tucker is an individualist. I think he believes what he's saying here, but it's not based in reality. The Jews are protecting their homeland because they believe that it's afforded to them. They believe that they are entitled to that soil based on their blood and their genetics and their ethnicity. They're not doing it because it's like I don't even know what, because it's like a random piece of land, like how a lot of new Americans view America is just kind of like, well, this is just where we happen to settle, like a new Guatemalan immigrant being in America. Oh, well, this is what America is. I don't, that's not how Jews view Israel at all. So there is absolutely an ethnic component to their geopolitical aims.
I mean, obviously, I'm denounced as an anti-Semite every day. Mm-hmm. So I don't really care what ADL thinks of me, but my Christian faith tells me that there's no such thing as blood guilt, and virtue or sin is not inherited. It's not a feature of DNA. So every person must be assessed individually as God assesses each person individually. And that's like a foundational view. So I always thought it's great to criticize and it's question like our relationship with Israel, because it's insane and it hurts us. We get nothing out of it. I completely agree with you there. But the second you're like, well, actually, it's the Jews. First of all, it's against my Christian faith. Like, I just don't believe that, and I never will.
Actually, it's the Jew. Every time he says Jews, he has to like do a thing with his hands. And I think it's just a reflex from him at this point, to kind of paint anybody who's saying Jews as like a crazy person. It's like they believe the moon's made of cheese. I don't know how intentional it is, but it is like a reflex of his, and it does convey craziness onto the other person. So don't love that. And I don't think Nick, like I said earlier, I don't think Nick has ever been on his show ranting and raving. It's the Jew. I think what he's had to say about Israel and Jewish people has been pretty measured, actually. And I think when you listen to his show, he lays all this out without sounding insane like Tucker's making it out to be.
Period. And second, then it becomes a way to discredit. That's when I was like, this guy's a Fed. Mm-hmm. I was totally convinced you were a Fed, because I was like, here he's bear hugging like the one sincere guy who lost his wife in Syria thanks to the fucking crazy wars, neocon wars. And he's discredited. He's doing the David Duke. Like David Duke.
Yeah, I mean, as I said in the Candace Tucker interview analysis, Joe Kent losing his wife in Syria does not make him any inherently more credible. That's a sad thing that happened. I don't support that. I think it's horrible that he lost his wife in Syria because of the neocons, but that doesn't make him above reproach, or that doesn't make his critiques or where some of his critiques fall short. That doesn't make them perfectly legitimate. That's a sad thing that happened, but it's just that it's sad, and it doesn't mean that he's always correct about the Middle East. And I don't like this whole, because his wife died, how dare you critique him? I mean, yeah, tragedy happens.
But always, every time I rolled out a new show, he would issue an endorsement of the show. I've never met the guy.
And also the David Duke thing, Tucker and these freaking Gen Xers, man. They between Alex Jones, who I like and I've met, and he's awesome, and he's actually the one that set up this that behind the scenes made this Tucker Nick interview happen. These freaking Gen Xers cannot like break themselves from the chains of David Duke mentally. Nobody's talking about David Duke. He's actually a very intelligent guy. Uh, but he's not a player anymore. So to keep invoking his name, all that does in the mind of the audience is make them think, the normie audience, wow, is Tucker talking to the David Duke of this generation? And there is a lot of David Dukeification of Nick, I've noticed. Again, if Tucker were trying to do that maliciously, I don't think he would have Nick on the show. But whether malicious or not, which I don't think it is, it's a bad habit. We don't need to keep invoking his name.
What's that? Well, it's the feds. Obviously, he's trying to destroy me by association. Whatever. You see the point? Yeah, but so let me ask you this. So if I'm supporting Joe Kent, I'm David Duke bear hugging. If I attack Joe Kent, I'm attacking the only sincere America First voices. I get it. I
mean, that's such a good ace that Nick said that he had this up his sleeve. That's so good. And that's what a lot of these Gen Xers do. A lot of these older guys. Nick is a little too quick for some of them. Yeah, I mean, he has no answer for that, and that's 100% true. Nick's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. If he endorses a GOP candidate, he's David Duke trying to bring him down. If he doesn't endorse them, then he's a Fed because he's trying to destroy. Well, actually, he's a Fed if he's David Duke bear hugging them, but he's also a Fed or a leftist plant if he critiques them. This is good.
Obviously, he's trying to destroy me by association. Whatever. You see the point? Yeah, but so let me ask you this. So if I'm supporting Joe Kent, I'm David Duke bear hugging. If I attack Joe Kent, I'm attacking the only sincere America First voices. I get it. I mean, I do get it, and I just want to say I love Joe Kent. I get it. Having been denounced by a lot of people I like, I know what that feels like. Mm-hmm. So I definitely am sympathetic to that. Yeah. I was denounced by someone like last night. I was hurt my feelings. You know what I mean? Whatever. I'm not going to say what her name is, but I helped her. I liked her. It's like, why are you denouncing me? Why don't you call me? Yeah. Right? I get that. I guess the two problems, but then on the other.
But he never answers Nick's thing. Nick says, heads I win, heads you win, tails I lose, basically, is what Nick said. And Tucker just goes, I like Joe Kent, and I've been denounced before. Where's the response to that? That's a perfectly legitimate response to what Tucker just laid out.
On the other hand, like one of my favorite people in the world is Glenn Greenwald. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love Glenn. Oh.
So we went from Nick saying, if I support a GOP candidate, then I'm like David Duke and I'm a Fed. If I don't support a GOP candidate or the GOP, then I am a leftist plant and I'm being funded by the Democrats. Fast forward 20 seconds and Tucker, the response to that seems to be, I love Glenn Greenwald and he's Jewish. What are we talking about? Can you respond to what Nick said, please?
What a good man. Glenn must have spent like 10 years attacking me full time. Tucker Carlson is da-da-da-da-da. And some of his criticism was correct, actually. A tool of the neocons, endorsing these fucking wars. Like, he was right. But he really hated me. And then when we started to agree on stuff, I was like, you know what? It's not about me. I don't care. Like, I don't want personal pique or my hurt feelings to govern my behavior. I guess that's what I'm saying. I'm not lecturing you. I get it. But I feel like, okay, he pissed you off. It's in a campaign. He's got 19 consultants. This kid's a Nazi. Be careful of him. Like, I don't know. Let it go. Well, and I
don't know. Let it go. Yeah, I mean, what's funny is that when Nick attacks somebody, here we are talking about how Nick attacked Joe Kent 3.5 years ago. And we're here talking about how he's attacked Matt Gaetz before, years ago, how he attacked, I don't know, whoever else Tucker was talking about that we mentioned earlier. We're talking about all these people that Nick attacked years ago. But for some reason, when Nick attacks, that's what we need to rehash. We need to get to the bottom of it. Why'd you do this? What happened? Why are you attacking these people? But when someone attacks Nick, he's supposed to just go, oh, well. I don't think that's how it works. This isn't a reciprocal relationship. I think that it's completely valid of Nick to respond to attacks made against him. And I don't like this whole response of, why aren't you just letting it go? Grow up. No, actually.
Totally agree with you, by the way. And that's why I don't take it personally at all. Like, and I like you. I've said very positive things about you on my show as well. I don't care. And I know, but I mean to say that
that's a Gen X thing also, to kind of show that they don't. There may be a Gen Xer in my family who's watching this, but he does this also. When you try to give them a concession, they go, I don't care. It's like, you do care, but if you didn't care, you wouldn't have chimed in to make it known you don't care. Like, part of the reason that Tucker was attacking Nick was because he felt threatened by Nick. So he definitely like what I'm saying is Nick has definitely been on Tucker's radar. And for him to just be like, you don't care, you definitely care, Ben. That's okay to care. It's okay, but this Gen X nihilism thing.
My goal is America first.
Right.
It's not about me. It's not about my personality. It's about winning for America, And
Right.
by winning, I mean we want to see our vision realized. But with Joe, for me, it was very specific that he said inclusive populism. And I really didn't like that because to me, there were a lot of similar phrases at this time, multiracial, working class populism, this kind of stuff. And I said, on some level, we do need to be exclusive, not inclusive. We do need to be right wing. We do need to be Christian. We do, on some level, need to be pro-white, not to the exclusion of everybody else, but recognizing that white people have a special heritage here as Americans.
Yeah, I mean, inclusive populism, that sounds good. That sounds good to the untrained, to the uninitiated and the untrained, but everything in politics, everything in life is prejudiciary and exclusive. Um, when I was selecting for a wife, and I didn't want somebody who had an OnlyFans, was I not being inclusive to the possibility of having a wife with an OnlyFans? When we bought a new car and bought an SUV, was I not being inclusive, sorry, towards different types of cars? Your whole life is made is made around decisions of excluding things and including things, and politics is no different. Saying that we need inclusive populism could mean we need to allow more leftists into the fold. We need left-wing populism to be a part of our right-wing populism, or else we're not being inclusive. Everything is exclusive. You have to exclude, you know, something without a definition can't take form. So if you're not defining it, it has no definition. It has no boundaries. Um, so yeah, I mean, for Tucker or for Nick is completely right there to say that we do actually need to be a little bit exclusive. Would they say that we need to be inclusive of pro-abortion people in the right wing? Do we need to be inclusive of neocons in the right wing? Do we need to be inclusive of pro-mass migration voices in the right wing? No, we're exclusive of them. And for a reason, you have to define your terms. You have to define your movement.
And so the reason I opposed him in 22 was not because I was mad, but it was to say America First cannot backslide into this kind of inclusive populism message, which I perceive to be more like GOP slop. And I'll tell you, when he ran again in 24, I did not oppose him. I did not oppose him. And I would have supported him if he had reached out or something like that. Because for me, it was very political and professional. I wanted to impose a cost. If you disavow someone because they criticize Israel, if you disavow someone for talking about white people and Christianity, I said, we can't let that slide because, and you understand why he did it. Like on some level, I don't hold it against him in the sense that there's such a strong incentive. It's easy to say, I disavow all these crazy Christians and all these crazy white nationalists because it buys you wiggle room with people that are attacking you. It's like easy to throw them under the bus and say, right, I'm one of the good guys. And so I said, it's too easy. We need to push in the other direction and say, you should feel less comfortable saying.
And ultimately, Nick was correct. His plan of attacking or what did he say? Making it consequential, to have consequences for disavowing him. He ultimately ended up being right. You know how you can tell? The fact that he's on Tucker Carlson's show. If Nick had no voice and was not able to effectively attack Tucker Carlson, I guarantee you Tucker would not be having him on his show if he could get away with not having him. The fact that Nick has been employing this tactic for years now has led him to where he's at. So, acting like this whole time Nick should have just been rolling with the punches and allowing people to attack him, to disavow him, that would not have led him to where he is now. So he was objectively correct in that assessment.
That people shouldn't talk about their race and religion. Maybe you'll think twice next time. And so I did it for a very specific reason. And
I get that. What I do think is bad, just objectively bad and destructive, is the all Jews are guilty or all anybody is guilty of anything, because that's just like not true.
Yeah, so here we go back to this whole thing. He's really hung up on and this is really Tucker's individualism side, his individualism coming out. He's very hung up on the idea that he's very egalitarian. We can't blame any person for the fault of the group, or blame a person's faults on the entire group, and that's valid. I don't think Nick has ever gone on a show and said, every Jew is responsible for the position we're in. It's actually a lot more nuanced than that. But when you look at things like the Zionist Organization of America, the World Jewish Congress, AIPAC, the things are in their name. They're not saying, we're this is just a bunch of individuals with separate beliefs in the WJC and the ZOA. We all believe different things. It's like, no, they're under a group with a big title that says World Jewish Congress. So it's I do agree with him that you can't assign collective guilt, but a lot of times they're the ones making the names themselves. So they're the ones grouping up themselves under the name of Judaism, under the identity of Jewishness. So talk to them about that.
And we don't believe that as Christians. I mean, my hero in life is Paul, because you call him Saint Paul, Saul of Tarsus, a Pharisee, and meets Jesus and becomes this just incredible man, incredibly brave, smart, loving, like everything you want to be as a man. He was Jew.
Yeah.
So like, and God did that to him. So it's like, you can't, I think that's and I don't think it's.
Yeah, he's a Jew who converted to Christianity to follow Christ. I don't think anybody takes issue with that. Would Josh Hammer, does Josh Hammer profess the name of Jesus Christ? No. Does Ben Shapiro profess the name of Jesus Christ? No. There's a reason that St. Paul specifically, like, yeah, I understand he was Jewish, but he also converted to be one of Christ's most loyal soldiers. So, this is a very common tactic.
Like mushy liberal bullshit, which I hate. And I hate all the language that you're describing. I get why it offends you, because it's code for I don't really believe what I'm saying. I have a PhD on the subject, so I know. But I also think there's like a true, not just principle, but like spiritual reality that we have to defend, which is God created every person as an individual, not as a group. No one gave birth to a community. Like, we hate that kind of thinking, right? Collectivist thinking like that. That's identity politics. That's what Dave Rubin engages in. That's why Dave is like just a child. Like, you don't pay any attention to Dave because he's like shallow. But we're not going to be that, right? Or no?
No, I completely agree with you. And, and not to be that guy and say that thing, but like, my best friend is a Jewish person. But here's my substantive disagreement, because as a Catholic, I could not agree more with you.
Yes.
In what you're saying. I love all people, even the ones that don't like us. We have to love them all, and we have to recognize that
we're required to.
Yes. And especially Aquinas says the Jews are a witness people. And so they actually have special protections under the law, according to Catholic philosophy. But I guess my substantive.
People were freaking out about that line quite a bit. I looked it up to make sure that was accurate. And St. Thomas Aquinas does in fact say that. So it's not, part of the magisterium of the Catholic Church or anything, but it is widely accepted among Aquinas and Catholic philosophers that, yeah, the Jews are witness people. I don't really have time to pull it up, but Aquinas did say that. So yeah, I mean, there's no collective guilt in Catholicism. There is no, every Jew is responsible for horrible things. That's not accurate. And what Nick said about Aquinas is accurate.
Disagreement, which I've said on the show also, is the idea that neoconservatism and Israel has nothing to do with Jewishness, Jewish identity, the Jewish religion, because clearly the state of Israel and the neocons are deeply motivated by that ethnic identity, and their allegiance to Israel proceeds from that. The plan of Greater Israel, the blood and soil nationalism of Israel, it stems from this ethno-religion, which is Judaism.
This is, just BLM, the new version. This is identity politics. They're engaging in identity politics. I mean, that's just so obvious to me.
Yeah, I mean, Tucker is so funny. He's a little bit stuck in that mindset that every example of collectivism is BLM. That's BLM. You're kind of playing into the left's moral framework there, the idea that any form of group identity is evil. And that's actually I think that's what Tucker still believes. He's the one who said it, not me. He said about a year and a half ago that he thought that white identity was evil and that he would never support anybody who, wanted white people to organize on the basis of identity. So those are his words. He's going to have to work on that. I mean, would he say that white identity, that, white people acting in their own interests as America becomes more and more diverse is just as evil as BLM burning down buildings because George Floyd died? I mean, I don't think he would say that now, but that's what he was saying a year and a half ago when he was diametrically opposed to Nick. So I know Nick is playing nice and keeping a straight face here, but this is the face of somebody who's like, yeah, I don't actually think that BLM and the World Jewish Congress are the same thing as white people saying, hey, we're tired of being attacked. We need to advocate for our own interests. Those actually aren't the same thing.
But the problem in your response, I get what you're saying, but the problem in your response is it does not apply to every individual.
No, and I would never say that.
Okay. Well, I just think it's important to say that, not to kind of like dodge the accusations against you. My best friends are Jewish. Like, okay, I agree. Embarrassing, even though it's probably true. It's true in my case, actually. But whatever. But because just that principle that we're all judged as individuals by what we do, that our faith, the decisions that we make, the way we live our lives, and God will judge every one of us in that way. And that's how we're supposed to judge. Like, I think that's true.
Yeah.
I think Nick did a good job of overcoming that objection there. I feel like, addressed and dealt with, basically. It asked and answered. Tucker says, "Is that what you believe? That every Jewish person, are you assigning collective guilt to the Jews?" Nick says, "No, I don't believe that." Fair enough. Tucker, I feel like if this were Candace, she would have been like, "No, but that's not actually what you said. You don't actually believe that." Tucker's like, "Okay, well, fair enough." So I do respect that.
I think it's true. Yeah, and I totally agree. But I guess the disagreement is, you say identity politics like it's a bad thing. I think identity is reality.
Identity is reality. Absolutely. You just can't have a country of 350 million that's diverse where it's just like warring ethnicities, because then it's Rwanda soon. And, the people with the most force just kill the others. So like, you can't have that here. Right?
Yeah. But I would say specifically as it pertains to, you, I think, have said it's the neocons. And I think that neoconservatism, where does it arise from? It arises from Jewish leftists who were mugged by reality when they saw the surprise attack in the Yom Kippur War.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of it for sure. But then, like, how do you explain Mike Huckabee, Ted Cruz?
Yeah,
and there are a lot like that. John Bolton. I mean, I've known them all.
So yeah, now we're getting into the Christian Zionist thing, and I think this is a strategic pivot from Tucker. He wants to get off of the Jewish thing. He probably knows at some level that Nick is correct, that neoconservatism was birthed by Jewish leftists, like Nick said after the Yom Kippur War. Irving Kristol being mugged by reality; those are his exact words when he saw that American leftists wouldn't support Jews after the Yom Kippur War. It's actually very similar to the Jewish response after October 7th. And you had all these leftist Jews and Jews that voted Democrat, Sean McGuire, Joe Lonsdale, not Peter Thiel, he's not Jewish, but a lot of these, Bill Ackman being one of the most premier examples of this. They felt that they were not being supported by the American left. They felt like Israel and Jews weren't being supported by the American left. So they pulled their money and pumped money into Donald Trump. So yeah, I mean, they are absolutely organizing on an ethnic basis and the interest of their ethnicity. So yeah, I mean, I can see why Tucker wants to get off that topic, and he does pivot to something legitimate. The Christian Zionists are a problem, but I think he kind of wants to get off that topic.
Ted Cruz, and there are a lot like that. John Bolton. I mean, I've known them all. George W. Bush, like Karl Rove. I mean, all people I know personally who I've seen like be seized by this brain virus, and they're not Jewish. Most of them are self-described Christians, and then the Christian Zionists who are, well, Christian Zionists. Like, what is that? Right. And I could just say for myself,
I mean, yeah, they're just loyal. They're loyal lackeys. They're loyal goyim of Israel. The Mike Huckabees, the Ted Cruzes. Yeah, I mean, it's downstream from the Jewish issue.
I dislike them more than anybody. Because like what? Because it's Christian heresy, and I'm offended by that as a Christian. That's why. So I don't like. Why not? Like, I'm pissed at the neocons. Very pissed. I've said that a million times. I've been mad since December of 2003 when I went to Iraq. And so like I went and hassled asked straightforward questions to Ted Cruz, because that seemed like he was a sitting senator who's like serving for Israel by his own description. He seemed like a worthy target. I'm not going after MTG, who's like the most sincere person. Like, why do I go after Ted Cruz? I don't understand.
Well, again, with Marjorie, I was a friend of hers, and she spoke.
Is MTG really like the most sincere? Like, she did sell out to Kevin McCarthy, hoping to gain favor with him. She did back him. She made a stupid move, and Mike Johnson won the speakership. But I don't know that Marjorie Taylor Greene is like the most sincere. I think Tucker would do a lot better citing Joe Kent when he says most sincere. MTG doesn't strike me as sincere. She strikes me as a Facebook mom who got red pilled and got elected to office and is power hungry.
My conference, and then the day after, she pretended like she didn't know me. And that was in 2022.
But it's a continuum. Like you said yourself, you showed up in college. Like one set of views, they evolve as you interact with reality, as the reality itself changes, as like you learn things, you grow. Like whatever, people change.
Well, and look, now that everyone agrees with me, I will graciously forgive them for being.
But why make it personal? Like who cares?
It's not personal for me. Like with Mark.
So when Nick, like I said earlier, when Nick gets attacked by people, it's who cares? It's not personal. But when Nick attacks Joe Kent, it's like, why'd you attack Joe? Why'd you attack Joe? Why are you attacking Marjorie? It's deeply personal. It's the same thing when Candace spent like 15 minutes trying to understand why Nick attacked Dave Smith. She spent like 15 minutes saying, but Dave is a nice guy. Why'd you attack Dave? It's deeply personal when Nick attacks somebody, but when Nick is attacked, he's supposed to just drop it and grow up. I mean, tell that to the people who attack Nick. Tell that to all the people on the timeline wailing that you're talking to Nick, Tucker. Tell them it's not personal. It's very personal for them, man.
If she wanted to, be aligned or whatever, I would totally be on board with her.
But where do you disagree with her?
I don't know, because I don't know what her new views are. She's really only come around on Israel this year, and I've been talking about this issue for 10 years. And
right, okay,
that's such
all
a
right,
good.
you win, but
That's such a good dig. He says, and Tucker says, "So what's your issue with Marjorie?" And Nick goes, "I don't know. I don't know what her views are now. They change all the time." That's true. And Tucker knows that that's true. So what does he say?
Year, and I've been talking about this issue for 10 years. And
Right, okay, all right, you win, but
You win, but it's not that he's trying to win. It's that he's responding to what you just asked. He's not beating you in arm wrestling. He's responding to what his critique is of Marjorie, and he's saying she she changes positions like the sun rises. It's every day. Same thing with Candace. So yeah, I mean, do you have a substantive response to that, or is it just okay, you win?
no, but it's not. But it's not like that. It's just it's a little. It feels like BS to me that. And I said this on Twitter the other day. It's like I got treated like I didn't exist.
Right, I get it.
Canceled for 10 years for saying these things. And that's really where all this drama comes from. A time when there was this intense censorship and nobody was on board with this stuff. Like, again, Marjorie, she fired, one of my people was working in her office. She fired that guy because someone found out that a Groyper was working in her office. And, that guy got his life ruined. And she pretended like she didn't know me and lied and said, I had no idea the conference I was speaking at. She knew exactly what it was. And that's fine. But now that she's on the same page, there's like this expectation, like, okay, well, why did you have a problem with her in the past? It's like because she was on the other team in the past.
Yeah, well, so was everybody.
Yeah,
I mean,
so now
so are you.
Yeah,
so what? I mean, why not? You want it's got to be bigger than just like us, right? And it's not. I don't think.
I mean, yeah, when he was 18 years old and listening to Mark Levin, yeah, and then for 10 years he's been beating the drum and spouting the same message that you're now agreeing with. You can say, "Oh, you were on a different team." Yeah, dude. When I was 6, I believed in Santa. Now I'm on the non-Santa team. I mean, yeah, you're missing. I feel like you're kind of missing the point, Tucker. That the point is that he was boxed out of the conservative movement for saying the things that everybody is agreeing with now. But now they still want to keep Nick boxed out, but then adopt all of his talking points.
Well, I'll speak for myself. I don't feel like I'm at war with the neocons or Israel. It's much bigger than that. It's like you want to restore America to a place where your grandchildren would enjoy growing up. That's it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and as far as Marjorie,
so who cares? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Okay, lots of people hurt my. If Dave Rubin called me tonight, which he would never do, though he has my cell, and said, I'm really sorry I called you Hitler. Like, I didn't mean it. You're raising lots of legitimate questions, which I think I sort of agree with, or I'm thinking about in a deeper way. I'd be like, great.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care.
And look, Tucker, that's why I'm sitting here,
Right.
I mean, because we had a contentious dialogue.
Well, I thought you were a Fed.
And I thought you were a Fed.
I was a Fed.
Yeah.
I'm not a Fed. But whatever, I don't care.
Yeah, we showed each other our badges. We know well.
No, but I thought you were a Fed because I was like, why not? It's not cucking to say you're not talking about all Jews when you oppose a foreign policy position. It's not. There's nothing liberal about that. It's just true. That's the Christian position, okay? And
it's not that he's not talking about all Jews. That's a complete straw man. It's that he is Jewish. He is Israel critical, but not Jewish critical. And those two things are fundamentally intertwined. It's the same thing with Dave Smith. It's the same thing that Nick was talking about on the interview with Candace. It's not that Tucker is cucking because he won't say every Jew is responsible for every problem in my life. That's not what the critique is. It's that these people have a hard time connecting the idea that Jewishness and Zionism are Jewishness, neoconservatism, Zionism, they're all deeply connected because of the Jewish identity. And Tucker has a problem saying that. That's what the critique is.
2, why are you attacking like the best people and not the worst people?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, he disavowed me for my views on Israel and said I talk too much about white people and Christianity. And to me, that's like a sincere ideological disagreement.
I get it.
And, same thing with Marjorie. Marjorie fired my guy. She disavowed me. And, and you worked with Blumenthal on that article, but you called me on the phone. And I was like, from my perspective, this is also stupid and inside baseball and whatever. But for the record, I was like, first of all, who is this kid? I'm working at Fox News. I'm aware there's an internet, but I'm more out of it than you may appreciate. And I'm like, out of nowhere, attacking this one. I had Joe Kent.
Now, Tucker, I do believe when he says, I'm not as on the internet as you think I am, versus when Candace says it. I think that Candace is completely, ironically, Candace was the one who said to Nick, you interneted too hard. You internet too hard. Hello, fellow kids, with her skateboard under her arm. But she said that you internet too hard. The irony is that Candace probably internets too hard, which is why she'll fall for any conspiracy theory that gets thrown her way. I believe that Tucker is not like, scrolling Twitter every day. I do agree with him on that. These are some of the things where I think Tucker is being earnest. I think he's being sincere. So I will give him that.
Huge to my house. I did this interview with him, and I'm always in search of a sincere politician. Not have to agree on everything, but I really believe sincerity is the whole game. If someone's heart is pure, he will be brave. I always have thought that, and it's turned out to be true. Marjorie's a perfect example. And that's all that matters. If you're afraid inside, if you're weak inside, you will crumble when it matters. So I really felt like, wow, Joe, I don't agree with him on everything, of course, but I was like, this guy is really sincere. He's like a good person. And then you show up and you're like, he's a CIA officer, and he was a CIA contractor, but like really like crush the guy. And it's like, why?
I mean, right there, Tucker laughs. He kind of mocks the idea that Joe Kent was in the CIA. And then he goes in the same breath, because he knows he can't totally lie about this stuff anymore. Says, well, I mean, he was a CIA contractor. Yeah, he was in the CIA. That's what we're saying.
Of all people, you agree on 90% of stuff. You know, that was my view. And I was like, well, clearly this kid's a Fed.
Right. But you didn't know the whole story.
I did. You're absolutely right.
And look, and now that, and I want to be, I'm not trying to be combative. I think
Go ahead. I'm not hurting my feelings.
No, I mean, here's what I'm trying to say is, now that Marjorie is pushing in the right direction, I absolutely support everything she's saying. And I've not been critical of her at all this year. Because I think
that is true. He's not lying. He hasn't said anything negative about Marjorie, aside from the fact that she's come late to the party and will not, give Nick his mea culpa, there is something to be said for that.
what she's doing is extremely courageous, and I think you're right. She is sincere.
So it sounds like not to put words in your mouth, but your life experience has left you so stung by the Republican establishment. You don't trust anybody. It sounds like.
Well, no, I mean, these people attacked me.
See, again, it's this like psychoanalyzing thing. He did this earlier with when he opened the interview and said, well, maybe you got so attacked by Jewish people that you looked at them and said, I do hate them all. That's what Candace did in her interview. And again, I don't think it's malicious coming from Tucker. I think maybe he's just trying to get Nick's views out there. I'm not going to impugn his motives at all. But he's doing it again. He's saying, he's doing what they do, like what millennial women do online to younger guys who are having a bad experience in the dating market. They say, well, you just feel this way because you're a virgin chud incel. And yeah, I mean, if that happened to me, I would hate women too. It's like, we don't hate women. We're critical of their behavior. Like, maybe some people do hate women, but what I'm talking about is like legitimate critiques of women's behavior and their nature and stuff like that. That's what Tucker's doing here. He's saying that, well, you've been broken up with by the GOP, so you don't trust anybody. Let's hear what Nick has to say to that.
You don't trust anybody. It sounds.
Well, no, I mean, these people attacked me when the rules were different, and now they got better, and now I'm good with them. I mean, I'm willing to be good with them, but I think that I don't know if Marjorie still has a problem with me or not.
I don't know. I do know, though, this is the last criticism I will level, and it's maybe not even your fault, but I do know that, the coordinated attacks against totally reasonable questions about what's in America's interest and what's not, those are all coordinated by the Israeli government. It's all come to light now. And they're against me. I've always thought I have the world's most moderate position on Israel. Don't hate Israel. Just don't want to get involved in their wars. Don't want to pay for this. Don't want to pay for abortion on demand in a foreign country. Sorry. When we're cutting food stamps on our own, like, that's outrageous. It's not America first. That's my view. Not embarrassed of it.
I mean, that's also this play to, that's really a play to like, it's kind of a play to black people, if we're being honest. This idea that the big problem with foreign aid to Israel is that we're not giving enough food stamps and EBT benefits to black people. No, that's actually not my big critique of sending Israel $3 billion a year. As my friend, who points this out, HHC, Hitler Hated Christ, not our guy on Twitter. He is my friend. He makes some good points. The big issue with Israel is not the fact that we send them $3 billion a year. That's minuscule in our annual budget. And even less of a big deal than that is that $3 billion isn't going to like black people in Alabama to continue to get them food stamps. That's actually not the biggest problem. It's the lack of sovereignty. It's the lack of ability on America's part to be able to make its own decisions without a foreign government and an alien people extracting value from the country and not allowing us to make our own decisions. That's the problem. So, yeah, I mean, I really shirk at that idea because you hear that a lot with the Ukraine analysis also. People say, the Tucker Carlson people, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, they'll say, we're sending all this money to Ukraine, but we still have poor black people in the south side of Chicago. Wonder how they feel about that. It's like, you know what? I'm pretty sure even if we cease sending all money to Ukraine, all money to Israel, that there would still be poverty in the U.S. That's actually not my problem. And yeah, I don't really like that line of logic, but yeah.
On our own, like, that's outrageous. It's not America first. That's my view. Not embarrassed of it at all. They are totally determined to take me out, I think, because I'm reasonable. Who would disagree with that? And call me all these names, most dangerous anti-Semite. I'm not even an anti-Semite. And they're not doing that to you because, this is my view, and it's not necessarily your fault, but because they're like, Fuentes discredits the reasonable people because he's always back.
So that is just an absolutely ridiculous assertion that Nick doesn't get attacked by Jews because he's actually doing their bidding by making anti-Semites look unreasonable or making legitimate criticizers of Israel, critics of Israel who are perfectly legitimate. He makes them look stupid so the Jews don't attack him. Nick has been attacked by the ADL, by the Ben Shapiro's. As Nick laid out himself, he's been attacked by Ben Shapiro since before he was old enough to buy a drink. before he was old enough to buy cigarettes. He was being attacked by Ben Shapiro at 18. So all these people have, and you know what? I'll probably wrap it up here and call this part one. But all to end this part, we at 108:41. Yeah, to kind of put a bookmark in that critique, the idea that Nick doesn't get any flack from Israel is absurd. I mean, anybody who's been watching him knows that's kind of his origin story. And you hear that a lot that, oh, well, have you noticed he doesn't get attacked by the Jewish lobby? That's probably because he's doing their bidding. In what world is Nick doing their bidding? You know, yeah, on the one hand, you have all these schizophrenic conspiracy theories, and that's what they are about Nick, is that on one hand he is a Fed and trying to snuggle up to the GOP because David Duke was a Fed, so that proves he's a Fed. But when he criticizes the GOP, he's actually like a left-wing plant, but he's actually doing Israel's bidding because they actually want to be criticized by loony people like Nick. It's all scatterbrained. It's just a grab bag of bad faith critiques. But I just completely disagree with what Tucker is saying there. The idea that that the Jewish lobby likes what Nick is saying because he furthers their goals or something. If that were the case, he would have a channel on YouTube. If that were the case, he'd be allowed on PayPal and Stripe. He'd be able to process credit cards. He would have a much easier life. So I really think that that's silly. But we'll jump back into it. I'm going to release part one. What is today? Thursday. We'll probably do part two on Saturday. Maybe sooner if I can get to it. But I hope you guys enjoyed part one. Like, comment, subscribe, share, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks, guys.